Why Media Group? The fastest growing media group in North America.
Hello and welcome to Y Media's newsroom. I'm Ramona Singh, and it's always so great to spend this time with you. We have the latest developments of the world's largest IPO, Spacex. Well, the numbers are changing from its projection. Well, this Spacex IPO was one of the largest in history, as its shares have now fallen for a third consecutive trading session, trimming some of the massive gains recorded since the company's June 12th debut. So now this decline comes as the company has confirmed that its first ever bond offering has signaled that despite, raising billions of dollars through its IPO, it still needs additional capital to fund its aggressive expansions of when it comes to AI infrastructure, Starship development, as well as space-based computing. Now, investors appear to be reassessing valuation after the initial post-IPO euphoria. While the stock is down roughly about 10% from its recent highs, it remains well above the IPO price, though, so that's significant. So now, what's essentially happened is SpaceX announced an investment-grade debt offering, its first trip to what would be the bond markets since becoming a public company back on June 12th. Now, the proceeds would essentially primarily be used to repay a large bridge loan, as well as fund its AI infrastructure expansion, which is a key part of this IPO, and support Starship development, and of course cover general corporate expenses. Now, the company did disclose approximately about $100.8 billion in cash and equivalents, which is a very staggering figure made possible only by this record-setting IPO when it went public. But what we're looking at is that SpaceX shares surged immediately after going public. So the IPO price was $135 a share, and its first close, it went approximately to about $160, and its peak was above 200, but now its recent pullback is at $165 to about $170 range. So now many investors are simply locking in these gains after this rapid run-up. And several analysts also believe that the stock's valuation already reflects extremely optimistic growth assumptions, where you have SpaceX has traded roughly 29 times projected in its 2027 revenues, but the company is still very heavily dependent on what would be its future success when it comes to its valuation. That would be in Starlink, Starship, AI infrastructure, space-based computing initiatives. Now, the bond offering has surprised some of its investors because it's arrived so soon after its IPO. We're talking about just weeks after. But this is coming at a time where we're hearing from, SpaceX saying that, this is key because they have enormous capital requirements for what they have in terms of Mars ambition. All the announcements of what they plan on doing on, planet Mars and the Starship development. And what's key to that is, of course, AI supercomputers and data centers to back it, and semiconductor manufacturing. So while we see that supporters are arguing that SpaceX possesses assets no other company can ever match right now, for example, Starlink, it's the company's satellite internet business that remains highly profitable and continues to grow globally. But then you also have the AI infrastructure, where you have recent reports indicating that SpaceX has secured major AI compute contracts, including a multi-billion-dollar agreement with Reflection AI. And then there's SpaceX leadership, right, which remains a dominant part of what would be the global strategy to continue its commercial space transportation. So overall, what we're watching is that SpaceX has fallen for 3 consecutive sessions. The company's announced its first bond offering. The cash and equivalent totals approximately $100.8 billion. And its revenues have increased 33% since last year to about $18.67 billion. And when it comes to Elon Musk, well, he's maintained roughly 82% of voting control through the company's share structure, which is significant. But when it comes to the pullback, price from its high is about 10%. So this is important as we're watching what this means. And, essentially, I think the pullback looks more like a reality check rather than a warning sign because, IPO priced SpaceX as a company that will dominate not only space launches, but also satellite internet, artificial intelligence, data centers, and potentially space-based computing. So that's an enormous amount of future growth already reflecting into the stock price. And so the more important story is that the debt offering, right? So companies typically issue debt based on whether they see opportunities worth pursuing immediately. And in the case of SpaceX, it appears to be saying that even after raising tens of billions of dollars through its IPO, the scale of its ambition requires even more money. And so whether investors view that as a confidence or perhaps maybe an overreach will determine the stock's next move. That is something that we're watching very closely. And as the global lovers of football or soccer, we're watching FIFA World Cup. And this is requiring about which teams are qualifying for the round of 32. And this is significant because the knockout stage is beginning to take shape at the expanded 48 team of FIFA World Cup under the new format of the top 2 teams from each of the 12 groups plus the 8 best third place teams advance to round of 32. Now, the teams that have officially qualified so far is Mexico, its national football team in Group A. It's the first team to officially reach its knockout stage. It secured qualifications after topping Group A, and it defeated South Korea to 1-0 after opening with a 2-0 win over South Africa. The other team that has secured its position is the United States men's national soccer team in Group D, has qualified after winning Group D. So that's very significant and has already secured a round of 32 berth. Currently awaiting a final determination on its opponents among the qualifying third place teams. And to that, you have also Germany. The national football team has qualified after consecutive victories, defeated Ivory Coast 2-1 after opening with dominant win over Curacao, and one of the strongest teams through the first 2 matches for Group E. Now, the teams close to qualifications are several heavyweights that are expected to qualify in the coming days. So we're watching England's national football team, France's national football team, Argentina's national football team, Spain, and Brazil's national football team all remain in a strong position entering the final stretch of the group stage. Now, Canada is currently sits at first in the Group B with 4 points and a positive 6 goal differential after its 6-0 win over Qatar. Switzerland is also a 4-point, but trails Canada on goal differences. Now, Canada's last group stage game is against Switzerland's national football team on June 24th. The winner will likely finish first in Group B. A draw could still leave Canada atop the group thanks to the superior goal difference. Now, Canada would advance to Group B winners and play a third place team from Group E, F, G, I, or J in the round of 32. So the current candidates that include are Ecuador, which is Group E, Sweden, Group F, Belgium, Group G, Senegal, Group I, Jordan, or Algeria in Group J. The exact opponents won't be known until all groups finish. And so Canada could face the runner-up from Group A. Right now, that is most likely potentially South Korea, Czechia, and South Africa. Now, Mexico has already clinched its first place into Group A, so that's what we'll be watching. And based on current standings and Canada's dominant goal differentials, Canada's in a strong position to win Group B. If the tournament ended today, Canada would be headed for round of 32 matchup against one of the tournament's best third place teams rather than a direct clash with another group runner-up. So winning the group could provide a more favorable path which would mean avoid Mexico until later rounds, avoid a direct Group A runner-up matchup, or opens the possibility of facing a third place qualifier instead of a higher seeded team. It keeps Canada alive, its dream of reaching its first ever World Cup round of 16. Now you have Disney's and Pixar's Toy Story 5 that essentially reached the cinemas, and it's doing very well. It became the biggest movie launch of 2026 and the highest opening film in the franchise's history. Very big news for Disney and Pixar. As you know, Toy Story first came out about 30 years ago. So this is a nostalgia that, you know, parents are able to take their children to watch Toy Story 5. It's very significant as it's done very, very well. The franchise history has now earned an estimated $312 million worldwide in its opening weekend. So that's a staggering amount in just 2 days. And the film brought in approximately $160 million domestically in the United States and $152 million internationally, surpassing the opening of Toy Story 4 and exceeding industry expectations of the hit. Legacy of Toy Story, which is, brought to you by Disney and Pixar. Now, the latest installment reunites Woody, Buzz, Jessie, and the gang while tackling a modern challenge, which is children increasingly choosing screens over traditional toys. And we can all, see that's been the case that, children as young as 2 years old are able to use their iPad very easily and watch screens. And what does it mean for these toys? And so the central villain is a tablet-like device called LilyPad, reflecting growing concerns about screen time and technology's impact on childhood play. So the story follows Bonnie, now older and increasingly attached to a smart device named LilyPad. And as Bonnie spends less time playing with her traditional toys, Jessie, Buzz, and the eventual Woody confront a difficult question. What happens when children stop playing with toys altogether? I think parents can really relate to this. And Pixar describes the film as toy meets tech, exploring how technology is changing childhood while maintaining the franchise's core themes of friendship, belonging, and growing up. So the returning cast is Tom Hanks as Woody, Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear, Joan Cusack as Jessie, Greta Lee as LilyPad, Conan O'Brien in a new role, and music by Randy Newman. This is significant because the worldwide opening weekend is now $312 million. North America's opening was $160 million. And an international opening, very comparable to at $152 million. And when it comes to the metrics of what the critics are saying, they're saying Rotten Tomatoes critics, gave it 93%, and its audience gave it a 95%. Cinema score is at A, and the franchise global box is very significant at nearly $3 billion before Part 5. So this is very successful for Toy Story 5 as another sign that theatrical moviegoers continue to recover, and as nostalgia of when it comes to a saga like Toy Story is delivering its biggest opening weekend in 2026 and is expected to be one of the year's highest grossing films. And analysts believe that ultimately surpass the $1 billion mark globally if momentum continues at this rate of its opening night. The movie focuses on what would be screen addiction, I think we can all relate to, and technology, as it also resonates with many parents at this time, and the conflict between toys and digital device taps into a broader culture of debate about children's screen time, making the story very relevant, yet very nostalgic all the same. Thank you for joining us for this time at Y Media Newsroom. I'm Ramona Singh. Until next time, take care and be well.